Welcome to our exploration of the Milgram experiment, a landmark study in psychology that revealed surprising truths about human behavior. Today we'll uncover how ordinary people can be influenced to obey authority, even when it conflicts with their morals. This journey begins with understanding the basics of obedience and why it matters in everyday life. As we move forward, you'll see how social situations shape our actions, sometimes in ways we don't expect. Let's set the stage for a deep dive into one of the most famous experiments in history and discover what it tells us about ourselves. Stanley Milgram, a Yale psychologist, designed his experiment to investigate how far people would go in obeying instructions from an authority figure. His curiosity was sparked by the events of World War II, where many claimed they were simply following orders. Milgram wanted to understand if obedience to authority could lead ordinary individuals to act against their conscience. This scene introduces Milgram's motivation and the historical context that shaped his research, setting the foundation for the experiment's design and purpose. Milgram experiment was conducted in a laboratory setting at Yale University. Participants were told they were part of a study on learning and memory. They were assigned the role of teacher, while another person, actually an actor, played the learner. The teacher's task was to administer electric shocks to the learner for incorrect answers. The shocks increased in intensity with each mistake. This setup was carefully crafted to observe how participants responded to authority and whether they would follow orders that conflicted with their morals. Key element of the experiment was the presence of an authoritative figure, the experimenter. Dressed in a lab coat, the experimenter instructed the teacher to continue administering shocks, even as the learner protested. This authoritative presence was crucial in influencing participants' actions. The experimenter's calm and firm instructions created a sense of obligation, making it difficult for participants to refuse. This scene highlights how authority can pressure individuals to act against their own judgment. Shock generator used in the experiment had switches labeled with increasing voltage, from mild to dangerous levels. Participants believed they were delivering real shocks, though no actual harm occurred. The labels and sounds made the experience feel authentic and stressful. As the voltage increased, the learner's reactions became more intense, including cries of pain and pleas to stop. This escalation tested the limits of obedience and the participants' willingness to follow order. Many participants showed signs of distress, sweating, trembling, and even nervous laughter. Despite their discomfort, most continued to follow the experimenter's instructions. Their reactions revealed the internal conflict between obeying authority and personal conscience. Some questioned the experiment, but the authoritative figure's insistence often overpowered their doubts. This scene illustrates the emotional toll of obedience and the struggle to resist authority. Learner, who was actually an actor, responded to shocks with increasing discomfort, eventually banging on the wall and refusing to answer. These reactions were scripted to escalate the tension and test the teacher's resolve. The teacher's dilemma intensified as the learner's protests grew louder. Despite knowing the learner was in pain, many participants continued, showing the powerful influence of authority. This scene demonstrates how social situations can override empathy and moral judgment. Milgram's results were astonishing. About 65% of participants continued to the highest shock level, despite the learner's protests. This high rate of obedience shocked both researchers and the public. The findings suggested that ordinary people are capable of following orders to extreme lengths when pressured by authority. This scene presents the statistics and their implications for understanding human behavior. Experiment exposed a deep moral conflict within participants. Many struggled with the decision to obey or refuse, torn between their sense of duty and concern for the learner. This conflict is central to understanding why people sometimes act against their values. The Milgram experiment revealed that social pressure and authority can override personal morals, leading to actions that participants later regretted. Social situations play a powerful role in shaping behavior. The Milgram experiment demonstrated how group dynamics and authority figures can influence individuals to act in ways they wouldn't normally consider. This scene explores the broader impact of social influence, showing how it affects decision-making and moral choices in everyday life. Authority figures are present in many aspects of life, from teachers and bosses to police and government officials. The Milgram experiment raises questions about how much power these figures hold and how their instructions can shape our actions. This scene connects the experiment's findings to real-world situations, encouraging us to reflect on our own responses to authority. Milgram experiment sparked intense debate about ethics in psychological research. Many criticized the study for causing emotional distress to participants, even though no physical harm occurred. This scene discusses the ethical standards that emerged as a result, shaping how future experiments are conducted and protecting participants from harm. After the experiment, participants were thoroughly debriefed. Milgram explained the true purpose of the study and reassured them that no real shocks were given. This process helped alleviate distress and provided insight into the importance of transparency in research. Debriefing is now a standard practice in psychological studies, ensuring participants understand their role and the study's goals. Milgram experiment's impact extends far beyond its original findings. It has influenced countless studies on obedience, authority, and social behavior. Researchers continue to explore why people obey and how to encourage ethical decision-making. This scene highlights the experiment's lasting legacy in psychology and its relevance to modern society. Milgram conducted several variations of his experiment to test different factors. He changed the location, the proximity of the authority figure, and the presence of other participants. These variations revealed that obedience rates could be influenced by subtle changes in the environment. This scene explores how context affects our willingness to obey. One variation involved changing the physical distance between the teacher and the learner. When the learner was closer, obedience rates dropped. This finding suggests that empathy and personal connection can reduce the influence of authority. The scene emphasizes the importance of proximity in shaping moral decisions. Milgram also tested the effect of group presence. When other participants refused to obey, the teacher was more likely to resist authority. This variation highlights the power of peer influence and collective action in challenging authority. The scene shows how group dynamics can empower individuals to make ethical choices. When the experimenter gave instructions by phone instead of in person, obedience rates decreased. This variation demonstrates that the physical presence of authority strengthens its influence. The scene explores how remote communication changes the dynamics of obedience and decision-making. Milgram's experiment has been replicated in various countries, revealing differences in obedience rates. Cultural norms and values play a significant role in shaping responses to authority. This scene examines how culture influences moral decisions and the willingness to obey. Milgram experiment's findings have practical applications in fields like education, law enforcement, and business. Understanding obedience helps leaders create ethical environments and encourages responsible behavior. This scene connects the experiment's lessons to everyday situations, showing how awareness can prevent harmful actions. History is filled with examples of obedience to authority, from military orders to social movements. The Milgram experiment helps explain why people sometimes follow harmful instructions. This scene explores historical cases and the role of obedience in shaping events. Not everyone obeys authority blindly. Some participants in the Milgram experiment refuse to continue, demonstrating the power of personal conviction. This scene highlights the factors that encourage resistance, such as strong morals, peer support, and awareness of consequences. The Milgram experiment teaches us valuable lessons about the importance of questioning authority and making ethical choices. It encourages us to reflect on our own behavior and consider the impact of our actions. This scene summarizes the key takeaways and their relevance to personal growth. Obedience to authority remains relevant today, especially in workplaces, schools, and government. The Milgram experiment reminds us to stay vigilant and uphold our values even when pressured. This scene connects the experiment's findings to contemporary issues and challenges. Media often portrays authority figures in powerful roles, influencing public perception. The Milgram experiment helps us understand how these portrayals affect our attitudes and behavior. This scene examines the relationship between media, authority, and obedience. Teaching about the Milgram experiment in schools raises awareness of social influence and ethical decision-making. Students learn to recognize authority's impact and develop critical thinking skills. This scene highlights the importance of education in promoting responsible behavior. Obedience to authority is common in the workplace, where employees follow instructions from supervisors. The Milgram experiment encourages leaders to foster ethical environments and empower employees to speak up. This scene explores the role of authority in shaping workplace culture. Law enforcement relies on obedience to authority, but ethical dilemmas can arise. The Milgram experiment's lessons help officers balance duty with moral responsibility. This scene discusses the challenges faced by law enforcement and the importance of ethical decision-making. Healthcare professionals often follow instructions from superiors but must also consider patient welfare. The Milgram experiment highlights the need for ethical decision-making in medical settings. This scene explores how authority influences healthcare and the importance of patient advocacy. Authority plays a role in parent-child relationships, shaping behavior and values. The Milgram experiment encourages parents to balance guidance with respect for children's autonomy. This scene discusses the impact of authority on family dynamics and moral development. Peer pressure is a form of social influence that can lead to obedience. The Milgram experiment shows how group dynamics affect decision-making. This scene explores the relationship between peer pressure and authority and how to resist negative influences. Technology has changed how authority is exercised with remote instructions and automated systems. The Milgram experiment's findings remain relevant as we navigate new forms of authority. This scene discusses the impact of technology on obedience and ethical choices. Social media platforms create new authority figures, from influencers to moderators. The Milgram experiment helps us understand how online authority shapes behavior. This scene examines the role of social media in promoting obedience and ethical awareness. Governments rely on obedience to maintain order but must balance authority with individual rights. The Milgram experiment's lessons encourage citizens to question instructions and uphold ethical standards. This scene explores the relationship between government, authority, and obedience. Religious leaders often hold authority, guiding followers' beliefs and actions. The Milgram experiment prompts reflection on the balance between faith and personal conscience. This scene discusses the impact of religious authority on moral decisions. Military organizations depend on strict obedience to authority. The Milgram experiment sheds light on the challenges soldiers face when orders conflict with morals. This scene explores the importance of ethical training and personal responsibility in the military. Obedience to authority can sometimes stifle creativity and innovation. The Milgram experiment encourages us to question instructions and think independently. This scene discusses the balance between following rules and fostering creative thinking. During crises, people often look to authority figures for guidance. The Milgram experiment shows the risks of blind obedience in stressful situations. This scene explores how to maintain ethical standards and critical thinking during emergencies. Justice systems rely on authority to enforce laws but must ensure fairness and respect for rights. The Milgram experiment's lessons help legal professionals balance obedience with ethical judgment. This scene discusses the role of authority in justice and law. Innovation often requires challenging authority and thinking outside the box. The Milgram experiment reminds us to question norms and pursue new ideas. This scene explores the relationship between authority and innovation in various fields. Effective leaders balance authority with empathy and ethical responsibility. The Milgram experiment encourages leaders to inspire trust and empower others. This scene discusses the qualities of ethical leadership and the impact of authority on teams. Conflicts often arise when authority is challenged. The Milgram experiment helps us understand the dynamics of conflict and the importance of respectful dialogue. This scene explores strategies for resolving conflicts and maintaining ethical standards. Social change often requires challenging authority and advocating for new norms. The Milgram experiment inspires individuals to question instructions and promote positive change. This scene discusses the role of authority in shaping society and driving progress. With authority comes responsibility. The Milgram experiment reminds us that leaders must act ethically and consider the impact of their instructions. This scene emphasizes the importance of responsible authority in all areas of life. As we conclude our journey through the Milgram experiment, we reflect on the powerful influence of authority and the importance of ethical decision-making. The experiment's lessons encourage us to question instructions, uphold our values, and promote responsible behavior. By understanding the dynamics of obedience, we can create a more ethical and compassionate society. Thank you for joining us in this exploration of human behavior and the enduring impact of the Milgram experiment.